came and said, you have to do this. You have to follow this religion. Otherwise, we annihilate or we kill everybody. There was not that kind of violence that was imposed similar to the Egyptian civilization or the Roman civilization or the Greek civilization. It was open movement of goods, peoples, and ideas. There was a free flow of ideas. Nobody said there's a border here. The civilization had no borders. That's very important. Borders in the sense of physical borders, borders in the sense of intellectual borders, and spiritual borders. One family can be Hindu, another family can be Muslim, Buddhist, Christian, Jews, everybody. They were living together. Maybe you take an average South Indian city, there could be maybe tens of different religions or sects and different variations. So that was very important. There were another thing common with this civilization was that it was a network of markets. It was very important. Markets were very important. People think markets only existed because of the Westerners introduced them to the world, etc. No, Asian civilizations, the market was a fundamental tool of movement. Goods moved from one place to another place. Pearls from Indonesia were going to Central Asia through India thousands of years before. The reason how this could happen was that transition of markets, one market to another market, etc. So markets gave economic fluidity, and markets were also transition of culture from one place to other place. Merchants were ambassadors. They took culture, products, etc. to different areas. So that is very important also. So the fundamental spirit of this civilization was compatibility. Because the idea of nationalism is that telling you that you are not compatible with my nationality. You are Indonesian, I am Indian, we are not compatible. You are not same like me. But the civilization says we are same because we believe in the same spirit of coexistence. And that's very important. And this civilization made violence unnecessary. That is one of the reasons why people think, how come few soldiers from Europe came and took a huge land like Indonesia, took it over. Uh, Dutch people came there, Portuguese came there, and they came with a few boats and they took over our countries. The reason why was that it was a peaceful civilization. For hundreds and thousands of years, maybe, yeah, several thousands of years, sorry, the civilization was functioning on basis of peaceful markets, peaceful coexistence, etc., and not about waging wars. We no need to build huge armies because it was waste of money and resources, etc. And this civilization did not need massive armies. So we were there without armies, without grand armies and navies, etc. And we could not defend ourselves. And that's how we were attacked. This civilization was attacked. So violence was not necessary. The next slide, please. Okay. So what weakened this civilization? How did this fantastic, solid civilization become weak? The first attack came from, this is just I'm just giving a hypothesis. This is my perception after reading history and after investigating, researching. This is my hypothesis. The first is that the problem started in the Indo-African sphere of our civilization. Here in the 7th century, Islam was a new religion and it was expanding. And Islam believed, rightly or wrongly, I don't want to judge that, believed that it has to impose its religion on other cultures, etc., by expanding militarily. And that immediately destroyed the harmony that existed in the Indo-African sphere. So markets were destroyed, communities were destroyed, coexistence was destroyed, and it became a kind of a model for the local people saying, okay, we also can do the same. So it was an example. So 7th century, I believe, from the 7th century to the 14th, 15th century, the Indo-African sphere, our civilization, the common civilization, decreased radically because it was disturbed. And then from 12th century, as the Indo-Central Asian sphere started going down a little bit, fringe Mesopotamians, I call them, the merchants, the kind of merchants of religion, etc. They took over from the Mesopotamian region. They started emigrating to the Central Asian sphere, and they brought in the caste system, some religions, etc., etc., and that also destroyed the unity of this civilization in the second part of our common civilization. And in the 15th century, the Indo-Central Asian civilization sphere collapsed when the Mughals attacked India. They brought in new standards, new ethics. Conquest and military expansion was the name of the game. So they came to Delhi, they took over that region, and then from there, the whole of India. It was conquest for the next 200 years. So it was violence. It was not about markets. It was not about compatibility building. So the second Central Asian sphere collapsed. Then in the 16th and 17th century, the Europeans, because the two spheres collapsed, our defense, our civilizational immunity also collapsed. And that made the Europeans come in to the Indo-Pacific region. The British, the Dutch, the Spanish, and the Portuguese, they came into this area and they started disturbing our civilizational compatibility. They said, okay, I take this island, I take Sumatra, this is mine, nobody else can come here. So the movement was stopped. The compatibility decreased. The next slide, please. So this division of a common, first thing was that there were no division, as I said earlier, the no borders, but then we start having the first notions of areas of control. It was no physical borders yet, but say areas of control. So the Indo-African sphere, which was taken by the Arabs, was later taken over by the Portuguese, by the British, and by the French. So they controlled. France took Madagascar, Djibouti, etc. Portuguese, Estado, India, they took some islands and they created Estado, State of India, etc. And the British started to come to Bombay with the help of the Portuguese and try to establish themselves there. So the first, they come and take over that sphere. Then the Central Asia, Indo-Central Asian sphere was taken slowly by the Russians. The Russians started attacking because as the Mongols withdrew from the attacks of Eurasia, Russians started taking over that region. So that region also started collapsing. And then finally, from the 16th to 17th century, the British, the French, and the Dutch and the Spanish took over our Indo-Pacific civilizational sphere. The Dutch took over Indonesia, the British took over India, the French Indo-China, etc., and the Spanish Philippines. So we were no longer one civilization. We never had borders. And now somebody from outside was coming and saying, Indonesia is mine, India is mine, etc., etc. They were building borders. Already borders start to appear. Never in the history of that civilization there were borders. There were no borders. For the first time, Europeans bring spheres of influence. Where we had civilization, they start to bring in spheres of influence and say, this is mine, that is yours. So complete collapse of our traditional compatibility. No movement of that, because Indonesian tradesmen could not go into India. Indian tradesmen could not go to Indonesia. Why? Because one belonged to Holland and another belonged to the British. Our compatibility was destroyed. We became foreigners to each other. So dysfunctionality was created. Dysfunctionality, so it could not function. So from there, the civilization goes into spiraling down and decline. Next slide, please. So here, the three spheres disappear. There's no, because when people then say that civilization, our common civilization now becomes Indian civilization, dominated by the British, who controlled that central part of the civilization spheres. So they started building borders between Burma and India, borders between Nepal or India, etc., Tibet and India. And then in the north, between Afghanistan and India, Persia and India, borders appear. Never before we had borders start to appear. So you can see that how we go from a civilization, an open system and compatibility, slowly, we go into spheres of influence and then to borders and specific curtailment, specifically saying that you are Indian, you are Burmese, you are Nepalese, you are Persian, Afghanistan, etc., etc. No, but that did not exist before. Afghanistan did not exist. Nepal did not exist. Burma did not exist. Borders did not exist. There were thousands of communities that were living one beside the other. So this destruction of local institutions. There's a maybe one tribal community between Burma and India. The British come and say, you don't exist from tomorrow. The tribal council does not exist. What exists is a British district. They call them districts. So from tomorrow, you're going to have an administration and it's called a district, and you have a leader that is a Brit who's going to rule over you. Your local institutions do not exist. The priorities also became different. The priorities of India starts to become, oh, invasion of China, invasion of Indonesia, invasion of Ethiopia, invasion of Persia. It's no longer enrichment of our civilization. The priority is British priorities. India has to invade neighbors, what they call the neighbors. So we have become enemies to each other, where before we were not. So colonial violence and wars become the main objective of this civilization. What was before trade, cultural exchange, and peace now become war, conflict, and death. So that becomes the priority of that civilization in the Indian civilization. Next slide, please. Then the parcelization of this common civilization. Now they said they go into more specific. So they said, okay, we have India here with thousands of communities, thousands of nations. We call them nations. We can call them nations. They say, okay, we exist. We don't want all that. What we will do is we'll create few predatory communities and tell them this belongs to you. So they create, because the British were very few, only 100,000 Brits ruling over a huge country of 400 million, they could not rule it properly because as time went, there's complexity. Indians also start to think about their own independence, etc. You cannot control them. So what they said was, we need collaborators. So they created collaborator communities in order for them to impose on all over India. So I call this fringe Mesopotamia because these people emigrated from the Mesopotamian region. They have the same priorities, and they always considered the rest of Indians as tribal, non-developed, and not belonging to their own communities. So these people associated themselves with the British, and the British said, okay, you're going to be with us, our partners. And for that reason, they created three elements. They created Hinduism, the Hindi language, and a political system, the Indian National Congress, which would then became a colonial democratic apparatus. So these three they created, and in the 1880s, and that gave these to these communities. And when in 1947 India was divided, it literally saying, if you look at the map here, you see Pakistan is so far away from Bangladesh today. Why did the British think that they belong to the same community? The reason was saying Pakistan is the predator community. I give you Bangladesh where you can graze, where you can take the resources, etc. So, and we have here the Indian part of the fringe Mesopotamia, which they said, okay, Gujaratis, Rajputs, Punjabis, Kashmiris, you can rule over India. So this is putting communities against communities. So we have here no civilization. We have nationalism now, saying that you are this, and you have to do this. So particularity. no openness. Everything is closed. Closed politically, closed intellectually, and closed physically. Borders, I mean, there's no connection because Pakistan is the deadly enemy of India. Before, it was not. It was the same community. So you see how civilization becomes smaller, smaller, smaller. And from 1947, Indian civilization is only in the borders of India. It is no longer belongs to that, even though a lot of Indonesians and I have the same names, same Sanskrit names, etc. We are not one civilization because we cannot be, because the Indian nationalism dictates that Indian civilization can be only Indian borders. You see how this is going smaller and smaller, and and who controls what is this civilization? What is the civilization that exists within India? The civilization is that if you are Hindu, if you speak Hindi language, and if you adhere to a political agenda, then you belong to the Indian civilization. Otherwise, you don't belong to the Indian civilization. So you see how we go from a huge civilization, open, etc., compatible with each other, to a closed civilization where slowly, slowly, before 1947, Muslims were not second-class citizens in India. Tribal people were not second-class citizens because they've been there for literally millions of years. They've been there. And now, slowly, slowly, the Indian civilization says, tribal people are not part of the main community. Muslims are not part of the main community. People who do not agree with the political system are not. So India is becoming anti-civilizational. Before, it was a platform for exchange between the three spheres I indicated. And today, it is not a platform anymore. It's not civilization because nothing can exchange. I cannot exchange my ideas. I cannot go there and tell people, no, we can have different ideas. No, we cannot have different ideas. We can have different religions. No, we cannot have different religions. Everything is constricted. And that cannot be civilization because it's anti-movement. There is no movement. It's only suffocation. And suffocation cannot be civilization. That's my idea. And as you see, because the British introduced the three elements of the Indian nationalism, political Hinduism, Hindi language, and a political system, I call it the British Indian nationalism. It is not even Indian nationalism. It is British Indian nationalism because the agenda is same as the British had, division of India. That is the main objective. So next slide, please. So we have come to, I think, the point of being a vast borderless civilization to a small area, and even then starting to become destroying all. Because what with this ideology of nationalism, what you're going to do is you're going to destroy diversity. You're not increasing diversity, you're going to destroy it. Civilization is about increasing diversity. So we're going to become very poor economically and metaphysically also and spiritually because hatred is not going to take us anywhere, especially faced with this kind of environmental problems, economic problems, and pandemics, etc. If there's no compatibility, if we cannot live together, it will be a very nasty place. So my future is that my idea of the future is that somebody has to do, and I hope Prime Minister Modi is a very capable leader and very agile leader and thinker. I hope he sees the wealth of our civilization, our common civilization, and says we should stop cultural and linguistic violence. There were 700, some 700 languages and dialects in India. And if just replace that with one language, we will lose a lot of culture. We will lose a lot of diversity, and that would be very bad. So I believe that Prime Minister Modi has to stop linguistic violence and instead start build compatibility. How people from different languages, different cultures in one land, in one area can live together. Otherwise, there is endless violence. Can you imagine in my small village, there were Muslims, Buddhists, and Hindus. So if in this 150 people cannot live together because they're going to kill each other because you are a Muslim or People in my village Muslims were eating cow meat. Nobody stopped. And now, in certain parts of India, if you eat cow meat, you are considered as a criminal. That cannot happen because it's going to divide societies. So we should build compatibility. And we have to initiate, because we've lost it. As I told you, the Arabs invaded one sphere, the Mongols invaded another sphere, and the Europeans invaded the main sphere I call the Indo-Pacific sphere. We have to rebuild them, and we have to initiate. I hope Prime Minister Modi in different forms or leaders from Indonesia will initiate an Indo-Pacific common civilizational forum where we can rebuild our civilization, because it's not India rebuilding civilization. We all have to rebuild our civilization. From Vietnam to Japan to Korea, all belong to this civilization, and we have to rebuild this civilization. So I hope there will be an Indo-Pacific common civilizational forum, and maybe we academics, scholars, we can start laying down the foundations for this. And there has to be an Indo-African common civilizational forum, and I think that also has to be built. And finally, there has to be an Indo-Central Asian common civilizational forum also, so that we can rebuild these spheres, regain the harmony, and literally ban violence from our system, because our system of civilization does not believe, because European civilization believes in violence. Violence, the states, systems, their society, and the civilization is built on violence. But our civilization, our states cannot be built on violence. It has to be something else. It has to be on compatibility, because we have a huge, rich diversity, and we don't want to destroy that diversity. So I believe that in the future, if we see in 50 years' time, in 100 years' time, I see that there'll be the feudal West, which believed in violence, will collapse. And the communist China, which also is adapting the same principles of violence and feudalism and borders, etc., will also collapse or be reduced. So that means the only civilization standing would be our common civilization. And this civilization becomes the universal civilization where violence is diminished. People are not killed or castigated because of their sexuality, their religion, color of the skin, their culture, what they eat, etc., etc. Because when we go to the smallest denominator and try to build on that, we will destroy a lot. That's why we have to make a common denominator that is diverse, expanding, and unlimited. So I am very positive that slowly the conditions are united for us to rebuild this common civilization. And I thank you for listening to me. Thank you very much. And here is Borobudur, which is a temple in Indonesia, one of the marvels of humanity. It also shows that we have a lot in common, a lot of things is in common. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor, for the detailed and exciting presentation. And I think we could all hear very interesting ideas about the concept of civilization and about the importance of this common civilization. And now we have come to the discussion and questions part. So if anyone have any questions, please feel free to ask it or add your comments, please.
Please feel free to ask any questions. I won't be shy or hurt of any questions you want to ask, please. Because this was a forum, open forum of intellectuals and professors, academics, I just wanted to make a point and present a hypothesis. You might disagree with parts of it or whole of it, but I wanted to create a discussion. Say, historically, I believe this happened, and that's how we came to this situation where one civilization now is 50 different countries, etc., etc., and how we can manage to rebuild the bridges broken by the invaders, broken by those who disturbed our civilization.
Yeah. Probably I would like to ask some my curiosity, Sandy. It is interesting, Professor, when you put compatibility of cultures. As you as we know that Indian already divided into a lot of group of politics but when you see about the causes of the causes when the British Empire conquered India, it is interesting when you put some of talks that is in short, this is the British Empire or European mistakes. When European represented by British didn't encourage the civilization development of India. Only feel that India has had a lot of resources and then and then can use Indian people as the slave or something bad in other bad things that you put compatibility. And I'm still curious how the Indian government learn their history, its histories in the past, when nationalisms and civilizations and how they view the compatibility. Is there any different interpretation about compatibility for Indian government? This is my curiosity. Or the Indian government try to make single culture or homocultures of India. Yeah, this is my curiosity. If you like to answer, it would be good, please. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you very much for the question, Arya. I would like to say that for the moment, there's a period where because India as an independent country had to be established from Nehru onwards, the first prime minister onwards, the idea was to concentrate and focus on India as a territorial unit, saying that this is India, this is modern India, and we would like to associate our culture, everything with that small geographical area. While only before few years, whole of South Asia was one unit. So for me, it's a kind of a period where there's a kind of a civil war. We were one country before, we were divided into small parts, and our first identity is they're saying that we are not Pakistan. And Bangladesh is saying we are not Pakistan, etc. So the whole of South Asia is saying the first thing that identifier of this subcontinent is saying, I'm not that. Immediately you see the effects of nationalism inside India. But at the same time, there's a kind of universalism that India is trying to portray. And they say, for example, they try to export yoga and say this is a universal aspect of our culture. And Gandhi, they also try to export Gandhism and say this is symbol of our peace, etc. But at the same time, it's the conception of a civilization of a small group of people who just want to show that national dresses, national dish, etc. Everything is very specific, and it cannot be specific because India is huge, 1.5 billion people with so many cultures, so many languages. We cannot say this particular part is India. It would be total injustice to humanity, to rationality, etc., saying that One particular culture is the culture of India. One particular language is the language of India. We have to find something else that unites all of us and not these elements that continuously distinguish each other. I cannot say I am Indian because I am not Pakistani. So if tomorrow Pakistan doesn't exist, I will not exist. So it's a division. Division has become the first identity of this civilization now. And division cannot be an identifier. I am this because I'm not that. There should be some other reason to say, what is your identifier? Like I said, the personal names. My name is Ramachandra. That's an identifier, positive identifier. I don't want to say, I'm Indian because I'm not Pakistani. It makes no sense. And that's not civilization. And we need each other. Pakistan now, with these floods, half of the country almost underwater, needs India. And we're putting a nationalism barrier saying, we are not going to help you because we're Indians. Or Pakistan says, we don't want your help because you are Indians, which is total nonsense, total nonsense. And we should go beyond that. Sorry if I don't know if I answered your question or not.
Yeah, it answered me already. Thank you so much, Professor. Yeah. Sandy? Sandy?
Does anyone have any other question?
Kurang already mungkin? Already maybe?
Sorry, maybe the idea was too new to everybody.
And once more, Professor, Pancasila was inspired by Indian words when the Pancasila emerged in the beginning of the independence of Indonesia. And it is interesting because Pancasila is the Indonesian ideology try to make compatibility, as you said, and how you make differences between nationalism in the beginning of the Indian and the modern India and up to now in current prime minister. And we know that some of conflict in India was caused by culture differences or religion differences in current time. Yeah,
it's a very good, interesting point because Panchashila was born from the what we call the Bandung spirit after the Bandung conference in Indonesia, and Panchashila was about coexistence, right? And this coexistence, as Nehru saw it and other leaders saw it, it was between states. Coexistence between Indonesia, India, coexistence between China and India, etc. But this did not solve the problem of what we call nation building. What does nation building mean in that context? So there was coexistence, peaceful coexistence between states, but within India, it was not peaceful. At the same time as Nehru was announcing Panchashila and speaking about peace, etc., he was invading South India, saying, you have to now join India. There was a war in Kashmir, there was a war in Hyderabad, etc. That means it was a very violent place inside. What Nehru was saying is, we will not meddle in each other's affairs. So it was a kind of agreement between states telling China, please, China, don't help Maoists in India. Don't interfere in my business. So that was Panchashila, the meaning of Panchashila. But that is very different from civilization. Civilizations means no violence, anywhere, inside and outside. And Panchashila is only about avoiding violence outside between states, but it was not about avoiding violence between people. Do you get the difference? Domestically, there was no Panchashila. It was violent place. But internationally, Nehru wanted Panchashila because India at that time was weak, the military was weak and everything, and he wanted a coexistence with China. Even then, China was much more powerful than India militarily. So he was gaining time. But this did not have an association with civilization because domestically he was not doing Panchashila. He was very dictatorial and suppressing a lot of communities.
Yeah, thank you so much, Professor. Yeah.
Sorry if I don't know if you understood. I hope you understood that we have to make a difference between domestic context and international context.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah. I understand. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, sir.
Hello, Sarya.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello, Professor Ramachandra. I have a simple questions to you. Maybe not related to your presentation, but a very, very interesting presentation, I think. But in Indonesia and in Surabaya, Mas Arya and I's country in Surabaya is Java. There are many Indians who have migrated since colonial time, since a colonial period. And most of them as traders. So my question is, as long as you know, Professors Ramachandra know, do Indians in various countries still maintain their relationship with their ancestor in India? Maybe there is organizations in India and to maintain this relation with India in Indonesia, perhaps, and India, Mumbai, and so on. That's Professor.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir, for this question. It's very interesting because when we talk about civilizations, nations, and nationalism, there's another element I could have also talked about, that are diasporas. And the diaspora, Indian diasporas, they're mainly commercial diasporas. As you know, the Tamils, we have 4 main diasporas: Gujarati, Tamil, Bengali, and Punjabi diasporas. And these diasporas, they're very much linked. It literally a nation within a nation. So it's a special status they have, these communities. They are inside and outside at the same time. So there could be an anachronism of the time during the civilization and during the nationalistic period. They kind of a different status they have. And they have organizations also that the diaspora is interlinked and connected. And that means they have a connection to the diaspora community or the original community they call in India. When it comes to, for example, the Tamil diaspora, we can no longer say that India is the original place and the other communities are attached, because they form one important diasporatic community. And Tamil Nadu is one part, Singapore is another part, except maybe Indonesia is another part. They're all linked together. So yes, they maintain links because cultural dynamism might be in Tamil Nadu, and they share this cultural dynamism, and also they might have some kind of help. They have commercial links, etc. So through these diasporas, these communities, what you might consider as migrant communities or immigrant communities, they maintain a line of communication and cultural exchange, and also maybe economic exchange also. For example, for the Sikh community to develop in India, which was from the 50s to the 90s, very poor in capital, not enough money. Capital was coming from the Sikh community in the United Kingdom, Canada, United States, etc. So these diasporas are also a system of communication power, political power also in India, because the Sikh community is about 30 million people, but at the same time, it's one of the most powerful communities in India. And it gets its power from, not from India itself, it gets its power from United Kingdom, from Canada, and the United States also. So to answer your question, yes, they maintain relation, and also it's mutually and reinforced. For example, maybe a company in Britain owned by a Sikh family needs some kind of engineers or experts, etc., human resources. They come from India. They bring people to of the same community to come and help them with the business, etc. So it's a two-way communication, permanent communication, and more as India develops these diasporatic communities, because we don't, when we say Indian emigration, or it's not Indian emigration, it's emigration from these four diasporatic communities, Punjabi, Gujarati, Tamil, and Bengali. So these four diasporas, they have immigration. There is no such thing as Indian emigration, because very few people emigrate from India. Only those people who emigrate most probably will speak Tamil, Punjabi, Gujarati, etc. So that's what I'd like to say. And also, that's, as I said earlier, these are the remains of the. There's nothing peculiar about these diasporas if we were in the civilizational period, because they were coming and going everywhere. And now they remain, diasporas remained. It also shows the previous complex civilization. And now we have nation states. India is a nation state, Indonesia a nation state, and what exists is the diaspora that links us from the civilizational time. So I don't know if I answered your questions, Sarkavi Hussain, Professor.
Thank you so much, Professor Ramachandra.
Okay, Sandy.
So, does anyone have any other question or comment to this topic? If not, I would like to say thank you for all of you for the participation, and thank you, Professor, for your presentation. It was very nice to see you all and have this public lecture. And I wish you all a wonderful day, and I hope we can meet next time too.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you for colleagues and professors and the dean, etc. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor. I would like to thank you very much, Sandy, for being moderator. And
thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, and then sorry. And then as we plan after public lecture, we have some events to make academic recognitions on joint publications and joint class. And if you don't mind, Professor, probably some of the PhD students can give lecture to the bachelor students or master students in Indonesia who has probably the same courses, history for India or history of South Asia or something like that. And then especially if this program will be supported by the Faculty of Humanities. I'm still contacting the deans of the Faculty of Humanities, LT at Loran University. I hope he will give the answer soon, probably represented by the Vice Dean of the International Affairs of the LT, Faculty of Humanities. And then before we close the public lecture, I would like to ask the Professor Sarkawi or Mbak Aurora. Mbak Aurora, this is from UPN Fiji, and she is one of important persons in UPN. UPN, you can turn on the voice, the microphone, Mbak Aurora.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bapak Arya, for this amazing opportunity. Thank you, Professor Ramachandra, Mrs. Alexandra Batonai as the moderator. We are very happy to have this very fruitful discussion, and I'm looking forward to have another collaborations with Dozet. I hope the base for all of the related parties that has been worked hard to make this event happen. Thank you very much, Bapak Arya. Once again, thank you.
Yeah. Mbak Aurora is the friends of Mbak Laura. Mbak Laura is diplomat of the Indonesian in Hungary. So she recommended Mbak Aurora is important important person in UPN. So we involve Mbak Aurora here to make some prospective collaborations between ELTE, Debrecen, and Airlangga University, and then others. We are still waiting for another university, for example, UGM, Universitas Gadjah Mada. We already attend. We have Mas Agus here. He will help us to make collaboration between UGM and the Hungarian University. So I would like to say hello also from University of Debrecen here, Mbak Budi, Mbak Eva Liana. Oh, okay. Okay. In short, we have some programs to continue this public lecture. Professor Byrappa, I will try to make some communications, join publication and join class. And Mbak Aurora and Airlangga University, and Debrecen University, and the Patimura University will send the draft of the MOU or MOA, a Memorandum of Understanding or Memorandum of Agreement. Of course, I will communicate with all of the authorities, with the dean, with the rector, all of the sites. Then, okay, if there is no some words that you want to say from all of you, we can close this public lecture. Okay.
I would like to just like to say that to colleagues from Fiji and Indonesia and Sriwijaya, everywhere, that whenever you feel that you want to invite somebody for to lecture or meet your students and give a lecture for MA students or PhD students, I am very happy to come, because we have to rebuild, as I said, our common civilization. And this first thing to do is to get to know each other and try to rebuild all that. And I will come anytime or Zoom and have lectures if needed. I can do that. And so please don't hesitate.
Yeah, Pak Sarkawi, maybe the last words.
Okay, thank you so much, Mas Arya. As I said before this webinar, I invite you, Professor Ramachandra, to come to our university. We have a lot of collaboration with abroad scholar. We have postdoctoral. We have a visiting lecture for short day, for short. We have a young professor. And before COVID-19, we have one lecture from India, from Mumbai. His name is Vivek Kantan, to teach in our university for 3 months. So if you have time, please come to our department and our university. So once again, thank you, Professor, and thank you, Alexandra, for your moderator. And thank you so much, Mas Arya Wanda Wirayuda. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. We can close our webinar and then we can meet in another occasion next month. Will be sent by the Professor of Aaron Laki. He is one professor at LT also, and he is expert on the history of Indonesia, history of Islam in Indonesia. Thank you so much again, Professor Pak Sarkawi from UPN, Debrecen, and all of them, all of the attendants. Thank you so much, and see you next month or another occasion. See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Miss.